Hi, my name is Sherry Kling, and on this Deeper Rhythm channel, I talk about how to listen for the deeper rhythm of your own life and how to be in the flow of the sacred source of all life. Now, I mostly focus on dreams, spirituality, and transformation, but I may occasionally dip into other topics, other things that basically help us to grow and to flourish. So if you like this content, please like, subscribe, and share this video. And when you subscribe, hit the little bell so that you get all the notifications. So today's question is there a deeper rhythm that guides our lives? Now, I touched on this in the introductory video I did, but I want to talk a little bit more about this. So if we're talking about listening to a deeper rhythm, what is it that we're listening for? Now, we're listening for that rushing river of creative energy that is at the base of life and is also the source of life. This is a primordial mystery. It's the reason why there is something rather than nothing, right? And so people throughout the ages have called this mystery God, but it doesn't have to be called by that name. And I hope that you'll allow me to use that word and not be put off by it, because it's a word that I think can be reclaimed from the image that it's come to mean in many people's minds. So when I use the word God, I am not talking about a bearded old man in the sky. I am not talking about something that that's a being that coerces us. I am not talking about any sacred thing that would be exclusionary, that would exclude any. I'm talking about this mystery, this dynamism, the vitality, the living vitality that is at the core of every moment as it arises in our lives. And so, you might have had moments where you experienced something bigger, right? You might have experienced awe and wonder, or you might have felt the presence of a kind of grace even in the midst of the most difficult times, or in moments of great suffering when you had failed to be who you wanted to be, you still maybe sensed a flicker of hope and well-being that kept you going, something that lifted you out of your own misery and gave you a glimpse of what might be. Now, again, I'm not talking about a religious system or a set of doctrines or beliefs that you have to adopt. Now, for both Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, this flow of life is the most basic layer of human experience and instinct, and it carries enormous power. It's like I said before, it's the source of vitality, dynamism, and creativity for our lives. Now, Freud didn't talk about that as being anything deeper than the individual, right? But Jung talked about what he called the collective unconscious, that it wasn't just our personal conscious and unconscious that was part of our psyche, but we had access to this collective unconscious. Now, this flow that I talk about is before the rational mind, and it's before language. It's not conscious. And so that's why it's often called primordial, because it's before all of those things. It's non-rational and it's unconscious, but it's connected to the whole, and therefore it carries great wisdom and power. And like I said earlier, it's pre-verbal. And so this flow, it cannot speak to us in language. It can't use words. It has to use symbol. Now, there's a way that we can access that. Now, Jung's talked about that the way that we access the wisdom that is in this primordial experience is through what he called non-directed thinking. Now, we can think about our thinking and our consciousness as kind of being on a spectrum. that there's focused conscious attention on one end of the spectrum, and at the other end we might say there's sleep and dreaming. And that kind of consciousness is more diffuse. It is not focused. It's more unconscious, but it's a kind of thinking. Now, again, we can look at that as a spectrum. So if Alan Watts used a metaphor of a spotlight versus a floodlight. So in a spotlight is like our directed conscious thinking. It's narrow and it's focused. But when we get into this non-directed thinking, our thinking becomes more spacious, more open, more broad, more like a floodlight. A floodlight lights a whole area. So that's what our non-directed thinking is like. And so that end of our thinking spectrum, that end of the spectrum of brain activity, that's where dreams and myths and fantasy and reverie and daydreaming, all of that is on that end of the spectrum of thinking. And so that was what Jung talked about when he used the term non-directed thinking. And it's that type of thinking that gives us access to the symbols that can arise from the collective unconscious into our awareness. And it's that material that comes from the collective unconscious that brings with it such richness and access even to wisdom that our conscious mind does not have access to. Now, in a future video, I'll talk more about the way that Jung talked about the psyche and how to understand that and what that means for us. But for now, I just want to talk about that it's by tapping in and listening in for that flow, that deeper rhythm of our own lives, that is how we can tap into that creative energy that gives us new possibilities. Now, one of the main ways that I'll be talking about on this channel about accessing that deeper rhythm and listening into that deeper rhythm is through paying attention to our dreams and our synchronicities and minding those things for the deep wisdom that they offer. Now, synchronicities are what Jung called meaningful coincidences. But there are other ways as well. We can talk about just general psychological inner work, spiritual practices. And so those are the kinds of things that I'll be talking about in future videos on this channel. So what happens when we listen for this deeper rhythm of our lives? Our lives change, and they change for the better. And I talked a little bit about that in the introduction, about how we are in such a fragmented state here in the U.S. that we are really suffering on so many levels because of the story that we tell ourselves, I think a false story, that we are these separate, isolated individuals, that we don't have value unless we're achieving some kind of material success, and that we can be held captive and held imprisoned and be a victim of our past forever. And I'm here to say that that is not true, that our lives can change, that we are not separate, that we are all connected, that we are all in relationship with everything else in the world, not even just other humans, but that our reality itself is one that is built on relationships. Just like we talk about ecological systems, when we talk about an ecosystem, there's nothing that can be isolated and pulled out of that system and talked about as if it were separate. Everything in an ecosystem is embedded in that system and is in relationship to everything else. And that is how we are with the whole of life. And so, and everything has value. Everything has deep inherent value. Every person, every animal, every rock, everything on this planet has inherent value for itself, not just for how we can use it. And we are not prisoners of our past. There are possibilities that are relevant to our lives, where we are in this moment, that can take us to the next moment, take us to something new and creative. Those possibilities are available in every moment. And again, I'll be talking more in future videos about some of the thinkers that I use in my own thinking to talk about that reality and how they can be helpful for us. So for now, I just want to invite you to walk with me on this journey, to listen for that deeper rhythm. And like I said earlier, there'll be future videos, there'll be classes, there'll be events, so look for links below to those things. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one for spiritual coaching and spiritual dream work, then click on the link below to reach out to me to request an introductory session. You can also click on the link below to connect with my Patreon account if you'd like to be part of this work that I do in a bigger way and support this journey. And so I just invite you to become part of this community, this Deeper Rhythm community. We will be here for each other. And so until next time, may your dreams be fruitful and your journey be joyful. Thank you.